Okay, what have we got next? I think it's Cannes, Regal Cheer.
Yeah, so Cannes Regal Cheer. This was one that was given to us by the Waco boys, wasn't it? Or they kind of tagged us in it. It was like, you need to get your lugs around this type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was released on the 3rd of February. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. On Beth Shalom Records. It contains 10 songs, approximately 17 minutes and 3 seconds long, so it's kind of a case of blink and you'll miss it. The band themselves are self-described short, snappy indie punk two-piece that hail from Brighton, UK. As far as I'm led to believe, it's the band's first full-length studio album. They've released a few EPs previously. An absolute belter. It's just fantastic. The songs are really short. I don't think any of them are longer than about 3 minute from what I remember.
I think they're barely over 2 minutes. Not sure. I haven't written any of the song lengths down, but yeah.
I'm just having a look at it now. So that there's only one. There's only one that's there's two actually that are just over 2 minutes. But they both said 2 minutes 20, 2 minutes 25. So it just gives you a feel for the pace, I suppose, of these songs. But yeah, it was right up my street. The album hits the ground running with the kind of rough and raucous banger that is PPL. Immediately, for my money, kind of brought to mind early noughties punk, kind of indie outfits like Dan and Aykroyd, for example, with that kind of fight punk or fight pop punk genre. And yeah, the album just doesn't let up at all. Love the guy's vocals, has that proper, I can't remember how he described it, but kind of similar in a way to the kind of Linda's vocal delivery. It's got that kind of, it's not slacker, but that kind of like, bleh. Like, I don't know, there's a kind of, I don't know how else to describe it.
There's kind of two.
It's thuggish, is it?
Yeah, there's a couple of there's that sort of thuggish, almost hardcore vocal delivery, but there's also a sort of more laid back. It's still quite gruff and sort of bassy, I suppose, but it's not quite slacker, but it's sort of edging towards that. Some of the songs actually reminded me of that Violent Soho album that we covered, which was definitely slacker, but a lot of the instrumentation and like some of the riffs and stuff, albeit a bit more grungy. Violent Soho are a bit more grungy, but there's just a kind of, the spirit of the songs felt quite similar to me. I mentioned, you mentioned like Dan and Aykroyd. I've mentioned, the Gender Roles album Prang. There's similarities to that. In fact, there's members of Really Big, Really Clever, I think, on the gang vocals on this album as well. So, and yeah, it just reminds me of bands like Fucked Up in the Bronx as well, like that sort of hardcore punk kind of stuff. But there's also like little bits of stuff like the Foo Fighters in there, and maybe a bit of Smashing Pumpkins, and even like the Strokes, just kind of in the background and in amongst all the all the bits and pieces.
It's interesting you say that as well, because we felt the same with the Violent Soho album as well, didn't we? Like, there was times where the lead singer's vocals were just like Billy Corgan, weren't they?
Yeah. And I mean, the vocals here are nothing like Billy Corgan, but there's bits in the instrumentals, I would say, that are reminiscent of Smashing Pumpkins, albeit just small bits here and there. But yeah, I love this album. I mean, I've done that thing again where I was like, right, I'll highlight all my favourite tracks in green, and I've just had to highlight every song because they're all great songs. I mean, there might be some that are slightly better than others, but it's hard to really pick out any ones that are the best tracks, really, because they're all so good. And
I think it's a flawless album. Like, genuinely, I think it's flawless. Like, it's just, if you're a band, if you're a fan of this type of thing, then there's going to be nothing on this that you dislike. I mean, my favourite track's probably Forest. I really like that. I kind of love that kind of juxtaposition between the kind of acoustic intro and the rest of the song. Also really kind of like the delivery of the that kind of vocal refrain of like, please tell me that there's more to life than this. And they do that on a couple of occasions. I really enjoyed that. It was such a hook. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that song, it starts off kind of like a ballad, but with gang vocals.
Yes.
And then you get the drums kick in, and you get those brilliant lyrics. And it's one of the longest. That's one of the
is that one of the
2 tracks? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the next track actually that reminds me instrumentally quite a lot of Violent Soho. Then That's What We're Here For. I think it's mainly the sort of bending guitars are in there. Yeah. It's probably one of the more alt rock sounding tracks, but there's a sort of yelp to the vocal lines, not that horrible kind of indie yelp that sometimes ruins songs. It's just a little bit of a yelp, which is quite good. And it's got that another quite cool vocal refrain of you can hit the nail on the head, but the nail can hit you back. Which is quite good.
There's loads of that, isn't there? It's On the Ground is, I think, that's the last track of the album. Again, just fell in love with that vocal refrain of I prefer it when you're not around. I think that's just chanted. There's kind of like full on gang vocals at that point. Yeah, just great.
Yeah,
I actually thought I heard Jack from Hutchcraft on this, but he's definitely not. Well, I thought I could hear his vocals on Behavioural Patterns.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I thought that track 8, Good Life, reminded me a lot of Waco. Just that sort of proper punk rock spirit to the song, just mainly in the main riff and the sort of rowdy vocals. Yeah, that one, interestingly, because it was them who made us aware of this album. But yeah, I thought Good Life, sounded quite a lot like almost like a Waco song, or it could have been Waco. But I didn't necessarily hear Jack Hutchcraft on Behavioural Patterns. But I mean, that is another just straight up banger, and I think that's probably the most hardcore punk song on the album. And it's got this really brilliant, like, there's like a drum crash and like a big like a bending guitar bit that bridges the verses. I don't think there's really a chorus. It's just got these verses, and then the chorus is kind of instrumental, but it's got this really that sort of drum crash and like bending guitar just links them together. It's I just love it.
It reminded me of Dance War from Frank Black's The Cult of Ray album. It's got very kind of similar kind of sounds to it.
Yeah, I don't know that song, but
it's good.
But I think Frank Black is probably a good reference point for some of the stuff on here as well. Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I could pick out any old song, any song in here, and I would mention Feet Glued specifically because, and that's track 4, and specifically because that really sounds like Fucked Up, and specifically something that could have been on their David Comes to Life album. It's just like it's got that sort of more poppier, rockier element, but with those kind of rough vocals. And it's something about Fucked Up that I really like, is that sort of juxtaposition. I think Feet Glued really not necessarily replicates that, but sounds quite like that. And I just love how like rowdy and melodic it is, which is something you could say for a lot of these tracks. Yeah,
absolutely, man. What have you given it?
Well, at the moment, I haven't actually written a score at the end of this, but I think in my head I have. And so in my head I had a strong 9 out of 10. But I mean, you at one point you said that this is basically flawless.
It is.
I find it hard to argue with that, to be honest. There's actually, when I was looking on the Bandcamp page, there's a user called Deathprog who just says, "Fucking hell, are you actually joking? Glorious." Which I think that just about sums it up, to be honest.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've given it a 10 out of 10. I'm giving them out left, right, and centre, man.
But I mean, with good reason. I mean, you're not just giving them out willy nilly. It's it's just the nature of how strong strong the music is here. So whilst I haven't quite gone to a 10 out of 10, I can totally understand why you have. So that's going in. That's going in as well.
It's going in, boys.
The Hall of Fame. Before we move on, I would say that there's a really good track by track interview with the band at noise.co.uk. So if you want a deep dive on like each of the tracks and what it means and just a bit of information from the band, then that's worth a read. They explains the meaning behind the first track, PPL. So PPL stands for play post lobotomy, and it is basically just them saying to a band they like called Broadbay to play their song post lobotomy more at gigs. So it's almost like somebody shouting from the crowd to say, Leo, play post lobotomy. I don't think the song has anything to do with that, but that's where the name comes from. So if you want more little tidbits like that, then go and read that track by track over at noise.co.uk. So that was Cans by Regal Cheer.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. So the tip of my tongue gets in the back of my throat. I should say something but I won't. Because if you know best, then that's the best that you'll be. I got to the circle until it breaks. You got the time. I've got something to win. Please tell me there's more to life than what's happening right this instant. You think it's easy? Let me silence you. It's not finished. It's finished.